really historical situation, but the humanity will thrive afterwards. And we try to think about this period as also as an opportunity for all of us to expose to the world and to the company the best version of ourselves. So we are focusing on this in nowadays.
Well, that's a great focus as of right now. Clemens, you and I, we've been talking over the last 2 days as well, and I think it's also very interesting what you guys are experiencing in Austria.
Yeah, us guys, man, you're also sitting in Austria, although you're German. Yeah, I mean, on one hand, what Ras mentioned regarding the working conditions changes, I think we, as an AI company, we're 100% in the same boat. We just finished setting up our GPU cluster in the office. That was like 4 weeks ago, and 3 weeks ago the virus hit. So we now also had to get workstations with proper GPUs. But good, you can also run games on them, so there might be use for them afterwards. As far as our company is concerned, we did lots of remote work before already. So the impact, I would say, from the daily operations was not that big. I think the biggest change is that if you work remote and you do your daily stand-ups and so on, or planning meetings, you need to be far more explicit in what you mean and what you want to achieve. So there is no, I don't know, if you have a Zoom call with 10 people and one person is nodding their head, you might not even notice. You really have to ask, get feedback. So the feedback loops become smaller and tighter, so to say. From a business perspective, yeah, I also agree with Ras. This will not be the year of growth. This will be the year of stability. From our company perspective, I would say it does not have much of an impact because most of our clients are rather large or very large, and these are long-running projects. So, but there's also lots of luck involved, because if this strikes six months earlier and the large contracts are not signed, then you have a problem. But what I can see on a macro level in Austria, there's almost on a daily basis that startups from the AI field contact me because the market for new proof of concepts or projects has completely dried up. So I think there's currently lots of discussion going on in Austria if the government should step in and offer relief funds, or in the worst case, even bail out VC-funded startups. And this is, I actually would be interested, how is this discussion going in Israel at the moment? Like, should the government bail out companies, or how is the government perceived to be, or the perceived role of the government in this situation from a startup perspective?
So right now in Israel, a week ago, the government released a lot of budgets to R&D projects for startups, near to, I think it's 1 billion shekels. It's like $300,000 million dollars. Yeah, but it's not enough, and there is a lot of skepticism here in Israel of how this kind of bailout can help us in the future, because we think the damage is larger than 1 billion for the high-tech industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that everywhere, all around the world, startups and tech companies will feel the impact. But maybe let's turn our vision a little bit, and let's look at how AI has impacted the current situation. What good has it done in the current situation? What have you guys witnessed? And what have you guys seen where this technology was applied in the crisis and made a name for itself? Clemens, maybe you want to start with it.
Yeah. I mean, the most prominent example in Austria by far was related to, let's say, movement patterns. There is one company that is using the mobile operator data and the mobile operator is also investor in the company that helps to get the data. But they use the mobile operator data to create movement patterns and like to calculate the risks and the spread of the virus. Everything is 100% GDPR conform. I mean, that was the sales pitch of that startup for the last 2 years. And what's interesting is the amazing backlash this received. Both the startup received it and the mobile operator. And I mean, the optimist in me is saying this is the very first time that people realize there is a GDPR and what does it actually mean? What does it mean that people can access my mobility data and so on? And I would say it's less of a AI specific topic. It's more forcing the media, the politicians and so on to really think through what was put in legislation 2 years ago. And I think afterwards it will be much easier to move forward with this type of data-driven business models than it used to be 3 months ago, for example, because now the things are finally discussed.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
Besides that, there is a task force from the Austrian government, and there is, for example, one AI/logistics company involved in the task force. It's like the demand prediction and the failure proofness of our supply chain for critical goods like medicine, healthcare, food, water, of course, this type of things. So this is also a case where AI is used. I think besides that, it's most of Austrian AI activity or EU is happening in the B2B space. So it's quite difficult to know what's happening behind the curtains.
Russ, maybe you want to also tackle the topic of tracking and just whatever you are seeing in Israel, as you guys are also dealing with similar topics.
Yeah, so as Clemens said, there are a lot of data in this pandemic. So in terms of data, coronavirus is the most, I think, interesting disease outbreak we have in the history, because everything is documented and we have a lot of data that refresh all the time. We can see how many people are ill in each company in a minute's resolution. So it's amazing for AI in an AI perspective, because data is key for AI, of course, and for the AI models to train themselves. So therefore, we can use, and when we see a lot of models that are using the data in order to determine how the pandemic will evolve on one end, but also to predict how different governments' policy will influence the spread of the outbreak. So we can see a lot of models. Some of them are AI models, some of them are machine learning models that are predicting what will be the spread in the next days, and how we can reduce the spread of the outbreak if we are using, for example, a lot of tests policy. We test each suspected patient, and we use a lot of tests, so we can isolate the sick patient more efficiently, and then we can reduce the spread of the outbreak, for example. So there are a lot of interesting models out there, and we also here in Israel are working a lot on this kind of initiative. Another aspect, and we are looking into this aspect here in Razor Labs in Israel with a medicine company. We can use also AI in order to predict which existing drugs can be used to treat coronavirus patients. There is a area of medicine that use existing drugs and make a cocktails, a combination of drugs in order to create a fast FDA-approved drugs to use to a different kind of disease than the origin of the drugs. So we are trying to use AI in order to predict which kind of existing drug combination can be used to solve the new virus and to treat better the patient in a short term. To be more specific, we are looking at the RNA of the coronavirus, and we are looking at historical data of a similar RNA structured virus, and we are trying to use this historical data in order to predict which drugs can be used to in a combination to be effective on this kind of disease.
Yeah. So you already touched on the impact that you guys are currently having on the situation. So my question would be, now that we had this huge crisis and obviously a lot of fantastic applications and some also of the questionable applications, what do you guys see when it comes to the decision makers, especially the political decision makers? Have they understood how important the technology is for the general well-being of society, and how important it will be to invest heavily into the advancement of artificial intelligence? Maybe also the Austrian perspective first, Clemens.
Yeah, that's difficult to say, because I mean, obviously none of us has the crystal ball, and there's not really a comparable situation. I mean, the last time something happened on such a global scale was the Spanish flu, and that is like 102 years away. What I can see is, I mean, that the discussion around data starts to get serious is good in my opinion, because until now it was treated like a religion. It was more like virtue signaling. You preserve the data and nothing has to be done with it. Now the people start talking about it. Where I could see that it gives a huge boost are probably two things. On the one hand side, I mean, legislators around the world are famous for being at least 2 decades behind when it comes to their IT infrastructure. So that they are now forced to use all these shiny internet things, also with their kids and so on, will surely give them a much better understanding what these things are. I mean, the Austrian government is now holding an online conference in a couple of days. They have Zoom calls, and probably not anymore. They have video calls and so on and so on. So to a certain degree, the decision makers arrived in the present, which is definitely a good thing. Yeah, data as well. And what I heard from the United States, and I find that angle quite interesting, is that when it comes to using, let's say, sensors or any type of smartware, smartwatches and so on, it is widely expected that the FDA will be more generous in giving approvals, and that this will happen faster in the future. And one example that is often cited is the Apple Watch. They initially planned to have the market rollout with 8 different types of health sensors, but because they never could get the approval, they just did it with 4. And up until today, it still only has 4, or let's say 5. Mm-hmm. And in order to really give a kickstart, you need to have a faster approval process, also saying that maybe this does not have 100% medical accuracy, but nevertheless, it's still giving vital health information. So I think for the whole e-health or smart health sector, it will give a huge boost.
Russ, your take on that?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with Clemens. AI, artificial intelligence, got a really good exposure during this period. And I think that governments and also huge organizations are more open to use this kind of technology because special times requires special means. So this is the right time to check new opportunities such as artificial intelligence. We are really we are feeling that organization, and especially the Israeli government, is more open to check and to research for our technology. And I think that also the open source community that is they are spread, of course, free all of their models, and we can see also in Washington Post and other press media, we can see that they are giving a stage for this kind of AI models. So it's really good for the industry and good for this technology and for this revolution.
Yeah, now we've talked about decision makers, but I would also like to tackle the question of the general public, because in a lot of conversations when you talk about artificial intelligence, people think about the robot that's taking over and that's trying to steal the world from Will Smith. So what have you guys experienced over the last few weeks? Has the general public also become a better understanding of what the technology is really about?
Yeah, I think that...
Or yeah, please go first.
Thank you. I think that, yeah, most of the public do not understand what is artificial intelligence, and they think about robots. But now I think that there is a better understanding that AI is not just autonomous robots or autonomous cars. It's also a complex models that can predict phenomena and can predict numbers. I think this is the new perspective the public got in the last 3-4 weeks.
Clemens?
Yeah, following in the same line of argumentation, I think with special, let's put it maybe another way. I think from an AI perspective, it's unfortunate that the COVID test does not use image recognition, because otherwise everybody would say, oh, finally we have AI, but that's not the case. So the very easy sellable example, unfortunately, doesn't exist. Besides the data discussion, I think one of the most important side effects of the current crisis will be that the technology skepticism is, let's say, finally decreasing in Europe. I mean, Europe has normally very high technology skepticism. I mean, for reference, I lived more than 10 years in Asia, and using learning programs and so on to learn Chinese, to learn Japanese, that's totally normal for kids, even when they're toddlers, like 3 or 4. And fast forward, this is not so common in Austria, or having video calls and so on for online teaching and so on. But nowadays, everyone has to use it, and people, I think, finally start to get a better understanding that not every content that is coming out from a screen is created equal. So linear television is something completely different from applying, or let's say doing an online course or watching an amazing interview from an accelerator.
Okay, so maybe we'll switch again to the direction of business, because Clemens, you mentioned something earlier that a lot of companies are approaching you right now, that certain projects are grounded, that people are focusing on the core business. Do you experience or do you hope and do you think that there will be a boost for the application of AI across various industries in the future, since a lot of positive effects have been shown by this current situation?
Immediately, probably not, but let's say 12, 18 months down the road, I could totally imagine that this will materialize in either R&D projects within the companies or in new startups that work with established companies together. So I really think this will be a boost. I mean, if you think back of the last big crisis that hit in 2008, 2009, the financial crisis, the it was actually, if you look back, it was also very kind to new startup ideas, because both Uber and Airbnb were formed during that time, and both of them lowered the cost of accommodation or transportation significantly. So I could imagine similar effects now trickling down to the broader economy with AI-based applications.
Yeah, Russ, you mentioned it earlier that Israel is already pushing money into the system. But what's your view for the future and for the future of AI?
So I agree with Clemens. In the really short term, everyone is stuck. Nobody wants to sign for a new contract nowadays. That's what we can see right now. Nobody is enthusiastic to create a new activity right now. But I think in the near future, maybe 3 to 6 to 12 months from now, the exposure that AI got and the urgent of everybody to be more efficient and to create a leaner operation and to also create a better remote control operation will give artificial intelligence a lot of spotlight, a good spotlight, and more investments, because the big companies have a lot of losses, of course, in quarter 2 and 3, and they need to cover it, and they need to think on the future. Maybe I don't want to be a skeptic, but in the next winter we can get another outbreak, the COVID-19 or the COVID-21. So we need to think. We need to be prepared. We need to be more prepared to work in remote control. We need to be able to use our factories in other way and to operate our factories. We cannot lose again the whole economy and to stop again the whole economy. We need to find a technological ways to operate the world as we used to know him until now. So I think in the last quarter, I think we can maybe see a good growth in this kind of investments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's yeah, Clemens, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may add one thing, because you mentioned something very interesting with the cost and the cost structure, and the companies have to ramp up again. I think if you're currently doing something in B2B AI and you can communicate what you're doing in a KPI way that the controller of your customer also understands this, you will have lots of traction once this is over. So if you can say you can reduce working capital, you can make it a better demand forecast and so on, I think this will be highly sought after once the economy opens up again. But I think for, let's say, not must-have topics, it might become even more difficult because it's a prioritization problem.
I really agree. I think that the nice-to-have project will not be approved in the near future. And if you don't know how to explain the KPI, the ROI of the project, so companies will not invest. Because of that, we are focusing, and we always focused on KPIs projects because we don't raise any money, so we must be very convincing to our clients. We focused on problems and on solutions that we can explain the short-term ROI and not the long-term maybe ROI.
You're also not raising money.
Yeah. So for 1 second, now that we talked about the immediate or midterm impact, maybe to finish this little interview and the statements from you guys, when you look into the future, and now we've talked about the applications and the validation that you guys are, especially Russ over there, that you're using in the medical field. What areas of application do you see for AI in the future where there will be no way around the technology?
So there are several solutions that we are focusing in. Our big focus before the outbreak was in top priority the industrial sector. Our solutions are helping factories to reduce costs by predicting malfunction in machines 2 weeks ahead, for example, and also to optimize the parameters of a machine in order to create more throughput. So we are planning to keep this focus because it's really ROI solution based. And the second focus will be the healthcare sector. We had several projects in this sector, but it wasn't so much top priority business sector for us. But nowadays, we anticipate that the investments in healthcare will be large, not just in the near 2 months or 3 months, but also to be prepared to the next winter. And then, therefore, we are looking at several research. The first one is about repurposing of drugs with the medicine company we are planning to partner with. And the second is to create a more autonomous scheduling operation for surgeries and for time slots to see a doctor. We have a good, really nice use case that we already developed in the last 3 weeks to the larger hospital here in Israel. And we want to commercialize this solution to Europe and maybe to the US in the future.
Good stuff. Clemens, your take on that?
I mean, your question was basically where will AI be the norm in the future? Where it's
yes, to a certain extent. Yeah. I mean, we as Ras mentioned earlier, obviously in the field of medical applications, there are already various tools that are AI based. But yeah, if you can tackle the question from whatever angle you would like to.
I would say I would even expand on that. I would say in quality control, it's definitely a given that AI is here to stay. And then I think in a couple of years, you will not even mention anymore that it has AI because it will be just so normal. In the same way as you don't say we make a video conference over the internet, because it's, of course you do it over the internet. So I think it will become more of a bullet point in the list and no longer the headline that AI is used. I think the big fields in the coming decade, or let's say in this decade, will be in decision making. So let's say the most prominent examples in recent years have been, let's say, an AI solving StarCraft 2 or League of Legends or Dota or, I don't know, Super Mario and so on. And I think this type of technology, reinforcement learning, you will see far more in decision making. And this will give a new quality to how you interact with the machine. Because if you think of quality control, you could think of an AI system as a glorified microscope. Whereas a decision-making system, you really act hand to hand, because some decisions the human will still override from the machine. Sometimes it's the other way around. So what does it, for example, mean? Programming robotics or simulating customer behavior, anything related to logistics, I think you will see lots of reinforcement learning there. And this will change even more the way businesses operate and the processes compared to, let's say, image recognition. And the other field, I would say, that has lots of potential in the coming years is generative networks. I mean, you might know it from deep fakes or, let's say, fake celebrities or artificial celebrities. I think this will have a huge impact on online shops, for example, because it doesn't matter how small your company is, you will always be afford to have your whole catalog there with models on your homepage. So everything will become more visual, not just pictures, but also videos and so on. But also more fake, of course.
Okay, I'm not ending on the fake part. I'm taking away the statement that you said when you started your answer. AI is here to stay. That's why, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time tonight. Russ, best wishes to Israel. Clemens, best wishes to somewhere in Austria. Have a good evening. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for these insights, guys.
Thanks for having us. Good evening.
Have a good one.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.